3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, and thank you for allowing us to come into your viewing environment. We are here with you every Monday through Friday from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, scheduling permitted, to address whatever topics you might like to discuss, whatever issues of life you find challenging or that you find difficult to navigate. You can discuss careers, finances, entrepreneurship. You can discuss marriage, divorce, raising children, blending families. You can discuss dating and relationships. Whatever's in your heart, whatever's on your mind, God is concerned about that which concerns you. So we are here in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast, with a little technical difficulty. That's why you see me looking at the board. But I am delighted to be in your viewing environment. And as always, we are here for you so that you will have a place to hear from God, to receive daily divine direction, which is brought to you by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock. The water collects in a natural artesian aquifer where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact until you unscrew the cap. Fiji Water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. This is Earth's finest water. And for those of you who continue giving on the Give segment of our app at New Life Delaware, and those of you that have made a weekly or monthly commitment by giving on the Give segment of our app at New Life Ministries International.com, we thank you for your support and for your commitment as we fulfill our commitment to God to be here to address whatever topics you might like to discuss and whatever issues of life you find challenging or that you find difficult to navigate. So I'm going to begin by saying to all of our listeners and viewers, first of all, I know some of you are anxious about hearing our segment on health and wellness. You're anxious about our monthly contributor, Rebecca Buva, licensed and registered dietitian and nutritionist. You've sent in a lot of communications. We will have Becca with us, not tomorrow, the first Thursday of every month, next Thursday. Tune in. You don't want to miss this. She's going to be giving us some great tips on health and wellness, on diet and nutrition. You can go on her website at beccathedietitian.com. You can become a client by using your insurance. So call your insurer. She accepts Blue Cross Blue Shield. She accepts Highmark, Blue Cross and Blue Shield. She accepts Aetna. She accepts Medicare, and I think one other now. So just go on her website, look at the offerings that she has available so that we can all enhance our health and wellness. I'm going to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that your husband wants to interview every young man your daughter dates. And you want to know at what age is it no longer acceptable for your husband to interview the young man. So, the young men, pardon me. So let me begin by saying this. There is no age as long as she continues to reside in your home. Now, I understand she's of college age now, but that doesn't eliminate the father's responsibility. Your husband is doing what a father is supposed to do. Young people may not like it, but the reality is, particularly, first of all, for young ladies, let me just address this. Until your father hands you off, walks you down the aisle, and hands you off to another man, a man who has chosen to care for you, nurture you, to lead you according to God's word, first of all, care for you, protect you, nurture you, and to build a great quality of life together with you. Until that day happens, the father is always going to interview every young man that he meets who's interested in his daughter. And so the age limit is, first of all, when she moves out of your household. But the second issue is, if it's I'm just gonna keep it real with you. If it's my daughter, I really want to take everybody out to dinner and sit down and get to know the young man that's interested in my daughter. Now, I'm not suggesting every date that she goes on, but I'm suggesting that if she starts talking about him, if she starts talking about my friend, if she starts talking about, oh, I went out on a date with this person, let's say whatever his name is, and I hear that name more than 3 times, well, if I hear that name 3 times mentioned, I'm going to try and invite everybody out to dinner. Because I want to know exactly who he is that is interested in my daughter. I want to, hopefully, if it goes any further than that, I want to meet his parents before we get to a wedding. Because I want to know that he doesn't come from a family with a whole lot of drama, trauma, and that's going to carry over into the life of my daughter. So I'm going to first invite my daughter and the young man out to dinner, and then later we'll see where that goes, because I want to know what his career plans are, what his 7-year plan is, what his 14-year plan is, what his 21-year plan is. I want to know those things, because if he doesn't have a plan for his own life, he can't possibly have a plan for the life of my daughter. So those are the things that a father does. Now, having said that, because your daughter is she's 20, you didn't tell me in that communication, but God allowed me to see in that secret place of your life. So she's in college, she's 20 years of age, she's dating someone, or she's dating, I should say, and your husband says if she's going to go out on a date, he wants to meet them, he wants them to pick her up at the house, and he wants to sit down and get to know them. So he interviews them. The pandemic's allowed us to do a lot of things that if she were off at college, she wouldn't have the opportunity to do. But she's not. So he has the opportunity to do this. He has the opportunity to do it because everyone is at home, they're not on campus, and so every time every time she goes out with someone, he wants to interview them, but the reality is she also has a car, and if it's not someone she's really interested in, then they're probably meeting out anyway. They're probably, when she does go out with her friends, he's going to show up anyway. But like I said, if he hears that name 3 times, it's time to then sit down and have a real conversation. If he's picking her up at the house, you get an opportunity to have a conversation with him anyway. You get, hello, how respectful is the young man? What's his disposition, his state of mind? You can have those questions, because if he's picking her up at the house, but she's probably going to say, okay, it's time to go, and they're going to be off. But if he hears that name 3 times, he needs to be asking questions, because now they're dating. Whether they're dating with purpose or not, they're dating. And we need to know who is going to be around our daughters, and we need to know who's going to be around our sons. We need to know that. Because at the end of the day, it's about a much bigger picture than we're just hanging out, or we're just going out to grab a bite. We're going to, some place where you can, I'll just use, even though they're not a sponsor of our broadcast, but a Dave & Buster's, for example. They're not going to, if your young lady is spending more time with someone more than twice, on the 3rd time, I need to ask some questions. Because you don't want them being distracted and taken off their focus either by someone who really doesn't have long-term intentions. And that's why fathers do what we do. So if she's living in your house, there's no age limit until she moves. And if she doesn't live in your home, then it's the father's job to say, okay, you know what, I want to take everybody out to dinner. Because parents will see something that young people won't see because they're only looking through one lens, and that's the lens of I want to be able to tell my friends I'm dating. I want to be able to go out and have some entertainment. So I want to have some fun, and I want to be able to eventually to travel, whether or not it's with them or not. But they want to do all of those things because everything's a photo op for the millennial generation. I'm just keeping it real. But let's do this the right way. You know, once upon a time, no one complained about fathers asking questions. But then fathers weren't always around. But when you have someone who is a father, who is at home, he has the right to ask those questions. And thank God he's asking them. You know, thank God that he's not going to allow his daughter to be hooked up with some nut. I'll just keep it real. With someone who doesn't have good intentions, someone who has no direction in life, someone who has no goals, someone who has no 7-year plan. Now, in your daughter's case, she would be 27. He has no 7-year plan for that. If she's dealing with someone at that level who has none of that going on for themselves, he's not the right person for it, and the father knows that. Because the father's been a man all his life. So what I'm going to recommend that you do is be the mother and allow your husband to be the father that he needs to be. If we just, as married couples, learn to stay in our lane, there's a reason that God created male and female. There's a reason that when those two are joined together and reproduce, that they are both there with a purpose. They are there to be the father and the mother. Not, if you don't have that, then, you know, if you're divorced, or the father of your children are not present, then you got to do what you got to do. But you have that. You have a husband who is being a father. Don't interfere with him being a father. Let him be the father. Your problem is your daughter's complaining about her father interfering in her dating life. That he wants to interview every young man that she dates. Well, he's not going to have an opportunity to interview every young man. But any of them that come to your home or that he hears about 3 times, he needs to follow up. Because that's what fathers do. If we let our daughters or our sons hook up with a nut and someday marry a nut, they're going to bring home a cluster of nuts. I used to tell my children all the time, I don't want to raise a village of idiots because I don't want you to grow up, get married, and bring home a village of idiots. But it's the same thing with the nut theory. Who's going to carry on the family legacy if you don't have responsible people? You know, you've got to take that into consideration. Now, I'm just talking about the family legacy. I'm not talking about the legacy of God, because that's a whole nother responsibility. That's why to whom much is given, much is required. But I'm just focused on the family legacy, meaning the family unit moving forward. Children, grandchildren, someday great-grandchildren. Who's going to be responsible for that if you have 2 people who have been joined together and one of them is irresponsible? let's try to walk this out where we all experience the fullness of God and not just catch particles of God. Let your husband do what a husband does, and you'll find that your daughter will be blessed by the presence of her father in her life. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G provider at no extra charge. So if you are not currently a T-Mobile customer, nor have you been for the previous 90 days, you may call or text on the T-Mobile call or text line at 267-992-1424. We will place you into our queue so that you may become a T-Mobile customer and experience America's largest and fastest 5G provider at no extra charge. Taxes and fees are included in your bill, and if you auto pay by attaching a credit card to your account, you will receive a discount on your monthly bill at T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G provider at no extra charge. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that your husband gets along with everyone. However, you think he exposes himself to be used by others, that he makes himself vulnerable to be used by others, and you want to know how can you get him to stop allowing other people to use him. You know, what's really interesting is he's not being used by other people. That's your perception of what you think he should be or he is. God is using him to show others what a man who loves God is supposed to look like. Now, what's interesting, and I'm going to say this out loud because very interestingly enough, so one of the things we're doing, we always have a big event in our church for Mother's Day. And this year we were asked for the men to do praise and worship for Mother's Day. And so we decided that we are going to do it. And immediately following Sunday's service last week, we had rehearsal for not all the men, because all the men aren't back. But we had men spread out in front of the altar rehearsing. And what's interesting is my wife made a comment to me and said, we've got a lot of men in our church. A lot of men who love God. Men who are husbands, fathers. But we have a lot of, she said, there's a lot of men in our church. And I said to her, well, it's not that we actually have a balance of men and women in our church. Normally in a lot of churches are loaded with women and there are a few men sprinkled in here or there. We have pretty much an equal balance in our church. And all the men were not there, nor were all the women there. But those who were in the house, we have about an equal balance of men and women. And then I was talking to my spiritual son, one of my spiritual sons, and I said, what's really interesting, and he made the comment, he said, normally churches are filled with women and not many men. But we have a lot of good men in our church who love God, who love their families, who are responsible men, men who are doing what is necessary to experience the fullness of God for themselves, their families. And then not only are they willing to do that, but they're willing to go outside of themselves and serve our external ministries and the things we do outside of the house of God. Good men and good men of God. And your husband, who's not one of our men, because you're not in our area, but you did indicate that your husband has been tuning in because you were referred to the broadcast, you were referred to Sunday sermon, and now your husband tunes in. And so, I want to say thank you both for being part of the viewing audience. But your husband is being used by God, not by other people. So your perception can't be that he lets people use him. Your perception has to be he's allowing God to use him. He's showing them what a godly man, but don't play him short, okay? Because that's not who he is. He just doesn't, he walks quietly and carries a big stick. And what I mean by that is, if he has to protect his family, he'll protect his family. But he's not going to allow people to use him. He's going to allow God to use him so that people can see God in him. So that people can say, this is a man who has character. This is a man who, and what they may not recognize now is that he has the character of God. He's created in God's image and in his likeness and in his image. And if he's created in the image of God and in the likeness of God, and he behaves himself in the image of God and the likeness of God, someone's going to see God. Someone's going to see God working in him. You have to ask yourself, why don't you see God working in him? You think because he's laid back, he is nice to everyone he comes in contact with, you think that is a sign of weakness. And the reason you think that is because you've been around people who have considered that a sign of weakness, and so therefore that's become your perception. In that quietness is strength. In that quietness is humility. In that quietness is the image of God. And for that, you should give God all the glory and all the praise. Everyone can't say that. There are plenty of men out there doing crazy things who are disrupting their own quality of life and the quality of life of everyone around them. There are men out there doing that. You don't have that. You have a godly man who's trying to live a godly life, but your perception of him is that he is allowing people to use him. You've got to change your perception and accept the fact that that's a man who is trying to live out the Word of God, the way of God, and the will of God. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by Charles Tyrwhitt, located in London, the UK. They also have stores in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and at the King of Prussia Mall in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So if you are in any of those areas, check for their store hours, stop in at their retail stores. They have everything a man could possibly need: shirts for men, ties for men, suits for men, and accessories. I'm in Charles Tyrwhitt attire today. So what you see is from Charles Tyrwhitt. And if you're not in any of those areas, you can order from Charles Tyrwhitt at ctshirts.com. They will ship and deliver right to your front door in an appropriate period of time. And the White Company, located in London, the UK. They also have a store on 5th Avenue in New York and a store at the Short Hills Mall in Short Hills, New Jersey. So if you're in either of those areas, you can stop in at their retail stores. They have everything you could possibly need: home goods, clothing for men, women, and children. If you're not in either of those areas, you can order from The White Company at thewhitecompany.com. They too will ship and deliver right to your front door in an appropriate period of time. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that your friends are doing nothing with their lives except having a good time. However, you do not have the time to just have a good time. You are committed to moving your life forward. So listen to this. Here's what's real interesting. You're a millennial. And you didn't say that in your communication, but God allowed me to see in that secret place of your life. Okay. So you are of the millennial generation. And you love the Lord like so many millennials say they do. The difference for you is you are going to church, you are going to work, you are working hard to be successful, and in addition to that, you are really at a point in your life where you no longer want to just hang out and have a good time. That's called growth. And if you have friends who are not growing, that implies that you've outgrown your friends. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't love them. That doesn't mean that you won't have conversations with them. That doesn't mean that you won't see them from time to time for, baby showers or weddings. That's not what that implies. What that implies is that you've outgrown them living on a daily basis. And what that means is that it's time for you to fly from that nest and move on to something much bigger that God has appointed for your life. See, the problem often for us is change. The problem for many people is to experience change or growth and realize that your friends are no longer at your level. Your friends are here, and without you realizing it, your level, your state of mind is now here. It's been, your horizons have been broadened. And so consequently, your friends are still hanging out, still looking for the next rooftop party, the next live event, the next celebrity party, anything that they can do to have a party, that's what they're looking for. You're looking for something of more substance. You have to change your environment. And what that means is that the places you're now going with your friends, you've got to change that environment. You've got to go to places that represent the next level. You've got to go to places where you are expanding your career potential, your investment potential, your professional potential, and experience new opportunities. You've got to go to the next level in God. And one of the things that I'm going to be doing in the coming month is I'm going to be working on a series with the congregation. So tune in if you're not in our area. But I'm going to be working on a series with the congregation in the month of May that is really going to help people to go to the next level. It's going to focus us on being a greater version of ourselves, and it's going to focus us on expanding our thoughts about philanthropic endeavors, about philanthropy. It's going to expand our thought process on what's bigger than ourselves. But in order for us to get to that level, we have to go to the next level. So I'm going to encourage you to go to the next level. You can't take your friends that you have that are satisfied at this level